You know what would make that better? A cup of white cane coffee.
Wow, that really is great coffee.
White cane coffee, because every cup makes a difference.
It's not just about music lessons. It's about hard work, perseverance, dedication, self-expression, making memories. Let's make memories together.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome into the cafe as White Cane Coffee presents Coffee and a Conversation. Brian Hagberg with you here on your daily local. Got myself a fresh cup of Dragon's Roast picked up right here at the cafe. You can stop in, get yourself a fresh cup, get it filled in one of these special laser engraved tumblers. When you get it filled with your purchase, you can bring it back. Get 50% off your refill as part of the White Cane Coffee Mug Club. While you're here, you can pick up maybe a Long John. They now have apple fritters available today, breakfast burritos as well. Stop in around lunchtime. Soup and sandwiches available at the cafe as well. If you can't make it down here into the plaza across from Tops, White Cane Coffee is also available on DoorDash. Just place your order, have your favorites delivered right to your door. You can also order your favorite roast to brew at home online at whitecanecoffee.com. This is Coffee and a Conversation. Our special guest this week is Amy Stewart, for a few more days anyway, Warren County School District Superintendent. And Amy, thanks so much for taking some time with us. I know this has got to be kind of a hectic time right now. You've got 6 days left in your tenure.
It is. It is kind of crazy, actually. I've done a lot of things in this job, but never not done the job. Right. Right. 5 days left next week.
Yeah. So, I mean, are you nervous, excited, a little of both? Has it even sunk in yet that this is the last week?
All of the above. I mean, like, obviously, I know it's the last week, right? We've been busy making sure that we can transition all of the tasks. So that's really a lot of work, making sure that somebody is ready. So the board's been working really hard on getting somebody named for superintendent. They're going to be doing that on Monday, which is exciting. That we'll know for sure who's going to be in the seat, so that there really is a seamless transition, which was really important to me and important to the board, that we hand off those tasks and that nothing gets dropped.
It looks like Gary Weber's gonna step in here. He's going before the board on Monday, and I know they had already agreed in December that if somebody had not been found, that he would step in as the interim. And like you said, this really seems like it will be a more seamless transition now. He's been the director of administrative support services for a number of years, and has a fairly good grasp of what he's walking into.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we've taken a similar path. That was the position that I was in prior to being named the superintendent about 7.5, 8 years ago. Now it's my 8th year. And so that gives him a great deal of experience and preparation. And we work together. Our whole team works together, and they're ready to hand off the baton.
And when you look at a position like a superintendent, I talked to some folks and they were kind of mulling about, does it make sense to have somebody who's already here step in because they're familiar with everything, or does it make more sense for somebody who's, been somewhere else and maybe had a different experience? I know the last couple of superintendents that have been quote unquote outsiders, it's mixed results. Yeah. But I mean, personally speaking for you, I mean, obviously you've been in the district, 33?
It's made 31 point. Okay. Yeah. With some other time. Yeah.
But did it make it easier for you to step into that role, do you think? Because you were familiar?
It sure did. This district, and people don't always know this, but our district is really not like most other school districts. When I sit next to my peers who do the same work, typically they're in a small geographic area with a high school, a middle school, 1 or 2 elementary schools, and it's a little bit more straightforward of a task, right? Here, it is a complicated district here. I mean, typically when I explain what we're doing here, people just look at me and, say, wow, how do you make that work? And how does that happen? It's complicated. So, there's always a positive in getting folks coming in from the outside. I mean, when we get administrators coming in from the outside, we're always very excited, with new ideas, those sorts of things. But there is a pretty steep learning curve in this seat to just knowing and understanding the district, what we
Yeah,
do,
right.
being a countywide district. So quite frankly, I mean, we've seen it done both
Mhm.
ways, right? Outside and inside. And I think there are advantages to both ways of going about it. But what you really need is that knowledge of the district
Mhm.
and the ability to be creative. And I think Gary has both of those things. So I'm excited about
Well, and
that.
you talk about knowledge of the district, right? And just understanding the dynamics that exist in, you know, 4 different attendance areas and all, have different views about, like you said, where it's, some places it's just, high school, maybe a middle school, a couple elementary schools, but they're all, within that same community. And for this district, right, you've got to
Yeah.
weigh how 4 different unique communities.
Yeah, and
are,
even more than 4.
well, yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, people say, what's going on at the high school? What do you mean the high school? There are
Right.
4, there are 4
Right,
high schools,
yeah.
right? And what does the community think? And we are made up of all the municipalities in the
Right,
county,
yeah.
with the exception of 3,
Mhm.
get counted. So there are definite differences among those communities, and knowing and understanding where they're at and what's going on and what those desires are is important.
So when you kind of look back on your career as a whole, right? What do you think the biggest change has been from the day you first stepped in the door here until today?
Wow. In the role of superintendent or overall? Because I mean, I started in 91.
Both, maybe?
Right?
Yeah, right.
I mean, yeah, right. I mean, I was,
Yeah.
we've been doing a lot of cleaning out. I've been cleaning out files. So it's been kind of a walk through history over
Yeah.
the last few weeks and all the things that have happened. I started teaching here in 1991. I mean, we didn't have the internet. Cell phones
Right,
weren't a
yeah,
thing,
yeah,
right? Like I
Yep.
remember where I was standing when the Twin Towers were hit,
Yeah.
at 9/11 school, those sorts of things. I mean, so obviously technology
right.
has changed everything.
Oh yeah.
I mean, everything. I remember where I was standing when I saw the internet for the first time at Sugar Grove Elementary, right? I mean, it was wild and crazy.
Yeah.
We were cleaning files. I mean, I'm looking at files with memos, formal
Oh,
memos,
right, yeah, yeah.
written in pencil, given to a secretary to type,
Uh-huh.
to then file the things that we text or we
Right, yeah,
email
email,
in 2 seconds
Right.
now. And it has obviously changed at the administrative end as well as from the student
Yeah.
aspect of things. Again, with my very early days in teaching, we were putting big floppy disks in computers to play Oregon Trail, which you
Yes.
probably did.
Yes,
right?
I did. Yep.
Right, just being
Yep.
able to give kids that sort of experience, let
Yeah.
alone where we are today, like with AI. So
Right.
technology, I mean, is the biggest change.
Yeah, I'm part of that whole generation that knows very explicitly what dysentery is and how you can die from it.
Yeah, right.
But like you said, I mean, I was part of an elementary school. It was in the 80s, and
Right.
your everything's in pencil and paper, and your most high tech thing for most classrooms was the overhead projector,
Right.
right?
And the mimeograph machines,
Yeah.
the smell.
I saw somebody tweet a picture of a history teacher down in Slippery Rock who said, "Oh, it's time to break out the old notes." And he had the overhead projector, and I kind of jokingly said to him, "Isn't that classified as an antique now?"
Yeah, right.
But how much does that? I mean, rapid advance
Oh my
in
gosh.
technology play into the way that just the classroom environment has changed.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, and it's interesting. Anybody who has taken administrative classes, you've taken like an admin, 101 history
Yeah.
of education. I mean, we have been in the same cycle
Yeah.
and same type of system for a long, 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 long
Mhm.
time. I mean, the agrarian school year,
Right.
they
Yeah.
go to school in the morning until the afternoon, or until
Yeah.
mid-afternoon, go
Right.
home, and the technology is, I think, really pushing us towards a brink of dynamic change.
Mhm.
And I think that's the uncomfortable feeling
Right,
that a lot
yeah.
of people have right now. I mean, these kids they're used to high
Yep.
level entertainment.
Yeah. Well, in
mean,
instant,
Yeah.
I'm not, I'm not engaged by this. Swipe.
Yeah.
Swipe. Right.
And their
Yeah.
why is very different. Why would
Yeah.
I memorize the presidents in order? I
Right,
can just
yeah,
look that
yeah.
up. It takes 2 seconds, right? And getting all of our teachers have been trained in different decades and
Mhm.
times. I mean, when I was in teacher preparation back in the the late 80s,
Right, yeah.
right? That's when I was in college learning those sorts of things. I mean, using technology was just being thought of,
Right,
at that
yeah.
point. And how do I use this in my classroom? And it started with Oregon Trail,
Right.
right? I mean,
Well, I mean,
popping it in
even,
there.
how many math teachers, and I'm sure you heard the same thing, well, you're not going to have a calculator with you all the time. And that's
Yeah.
right. Well,
Actually, I do.
actually, I do now,
Yeah.
and not just a calculator, but, a dictionary and a thesaurus and, all these other tools that were,
So important.
you'd have a stack this high if you tried to carry them all around. And now it's
It's a different game. I mean, it really is a
this
different game. Yeah.
mirrored here.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And it, but again, how does that impact what teachers are able to do in a classroom, and how they have to maybe change the dynamic in the ways in which they reach kids today?
Yeah, I mean, we talk about it all. We talk about engaging kids. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the magic. I mean, when you walk into a classroom and you don't have to
Right.
wonder whether the kids are engaged or not. You can see that what the teachers are doing and trying to put together those dynamic lessons, and that's the art of teaching, and that's
Yeah.
what makes it hard. I mean, people think you just walk in and it just automatically happens, but
Okay, class, settle down, right?
Yeah, when it looks so seamless, it's because of all those hours
Mm.
of preparation and time that have been put into making that lesson dynamic for the kids and giving them something they can't get
Right.
by just looking it up.
And so, for your career track, what made you kind of shift from teaching into
Mm.
the administrative side, and what were some of the things that you maybe kind of opened your eyes to the first time you stepped into that administrator type role?
Well, my story is a little bit interesting. I was in a kind of like a teaching coach role
Mm.
when John Grant was the superintendent here. So I was working on integration of technology in the classroom and really using tools to help teachers be more efficient, learn,
Right.
identify, the child is having difficulty here or
Yeah.
there. So I was involved in a lot of technology efforts that kind of hit into the central admin
Yeah.
team. And so I was asked to take on a role. I didn't really ask for it.
Yeah.
John recognized at that time that we really didn't have a strong technology program in terms of a teacher tech program, right? We had a nuts and bolts tech
Yeah.
admin, but so I was asked to take on the role. So I did. Took on, taking classes to become that administrator and learn all of it. And I was lucky to be surrounded by a team of administrators across the district that were phenomenal.
Mhm.
Most of them were senior in their careers. It was John Seacreast, it was Joe Tassone,
Mhm.
Larry Conrad,
Right.
Rosemary Green.
Yeah.
The team. Actually, Rosemary wasn't there yet, but. So I learned, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I learned like it was like drinking out of the fire hose,
Right.
and John Grant was a great mentor to me at that point. And a lot of those folks were planning on leaving. They had exit plans within the next 5 years, so it kind of became a knowledge dump to Amy. You know what I mean? Right? Like
here you go, right?
and as in integrating technology, you learn the district because there aren't very many parts of the district you don't touch. I mean, the cafeteria system has to be tied in, the library system has to be tied in, the transportation system has to be tied in. So really, I had the advantage of being able to learn in every facet of the district from the ground up in terms of how does this work?
Yeah,
because the tech had to be built to
and
support it.
have a hand in tying all that stuff together.
Yeah, when we started, we didn't have our buildings weren't tied together.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
So the fiber wasn't on the poles to connect the building. So we did that. We didn't have fiber to the classrooms, to connect that. So we did that, right? I mean, getting computers in every classroom and then getting islands of information into basically our own cloud at that point, even though it was hardwired in, getting that done. So that's how I learned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you were an interim a couple of times, right?
I was.
Before becoming full-time superintendent. What were you able to take away from those periods where you were the acting superintendent that allowed you to make this transition a little smoother for yourself?
Right. I guess a couple of things. I mean, I did interim a couple of times. I was asked to do that again. I really wasn't something that I desired at that time. I mean, I was raising kids.
Right.
My husband and I are here and had 2 girls that were in the school system. And when you become superintendent, it's something that you've got to be you have to be authentically you. You have
Right.
to believe, you know what I
Yeah.
mean, and what it is that you're doing, and you have to align with the board that you're working with because
Mhm.
that's the work you're going to be doing. So you have to be ready to go if it's
Yeah.
not a good fit,
Right.
right? You have
Yeah.
to be ready to say, look, this is great, but it's not for me. This isn't
Mhm.
who I'm about. Um, so I was really just not ready to do that and have to be in a position where we would move our girls, you know what I
Right.
mean, in the
Yeah.
middle of high school or something like
Yeah.
that. So I really, really wanted to wait until they were done.
Mhm.
So as I hopped in, I acquiesced and said, I would take on
Right.
those interim roles. And I think what I learned right away after working for so many different people is you just need to be authentically you.
Yeah.
You've got to do it your way. I mean, you can
Right.
figure
Yeah.
it out, right? And you also have to know that there's no mastery of this job. I mean,
Right. Yeah.
literally, I learn something new every day. I
Mhm.
mean, there's always a new situation or a
Yeah.
new something coming out that you have to embrace being a lifelong learner
Right.
and,
Yeah.
and being able to figure that out and being able to be comfortable,
Right. Yeah.
in that
Yeah.
role and being you and having that fit with the board.
And understanding that there are new things coming out and new things that you're
Yeah.
gonna
And you have to
learn.
embrace
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. And, you talked about your girls were still in school a
Yeah.
couple of those times. How does it change the family dynamic? Or do they feel
Oh,
like there was more pressure on
oh my
them now
gosh.
because you were?
I'm sure both of them would say that.
Yeah.
And, the low-lying fruit here is that, of course, the snow day,
Right.
like, Mom,
Right. Come on, it's really bad out there.
yeah,
Right.
everybody
Yeah.
wants a snow day. Yeah, but it definitely put pressures on them, and people treated them differently,
Yeah.
because of it, and that's unfortunate. But they're good, strong kids,
Mhm.
who took it. But there's definitely any administrator and teachers too.
Yeah.
I mean, when you're involved in the system and everybody knows you and your things, it makes it hard.
Yeah. Well, and even to just go from that, where you're a colleague kind of on the same level, right, with the teachers, and now you're in a position, where it's like a supervisory kind of thing. How do those dynamics change,
Oh,
and how do you navigate through something
it's
like
hard.
that?
It's hard.
Yeah.
We have 360 teachers.
Yeah.
We have over 600 employees in the school
Mhm.
district, and not everything goes well every day,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's how it works. The Again, I've tried to stay true to who I am. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? But at the end of the day, you have to decide, who we have to bat, for,
Right.
who
Yeah.
we batting for. And you try to bat for everybody all the
Yeah.
time, but if push comes to shove, kids are at the center of what we do.
Mhm.
And sometimes you have to have uncomfortable conversations with people,
Yeah.
and they don't have to be mean or awful,
Right.
but I mean, we have direct,
Yeah.
conversations. So it definitely strains some relationships. The folks that are really your friends are
Mhm.
still going to stay your
Right.
friends, and it's hard sometimes to know that you're having authentic dialogue.
Yeah.
Sometimes people, are telling you things because of the seat you're in, not
Right.
because of
Yeah.
who you are.
Yeah.
So you just sometimes they say it's a lonely job,
Right.
and sometimes it
Yeah.
really is.
It's lonely to be at the top, right?
Sometimes, yeah.
And obviously, kids, you said, are at the center of everything that you do. And I'm sure some of the challenges are, when you have parents come in and right, but
Mhm.
because your focus has to be on the whole,
Absolutely.
yet when, a parent or maybe a small group of parents is coming in, and, they're focusing on, well, what's best for
Yeah.
my kid. And, again, how do you balance, what's in the best interest of, a particular student at any point in time
Yeah.
versus how it affects the whole.
It's the hardest part for anybody, whether it be parents or whether it be teachers,
Mhm.
sometimes even administrators,
Yeah.
to see the whole picture. Board members too, right?
Right.
To see
Yeah.
the whole picture
Yeah.
and help to build that whole picture for everybody in
Mhm.
terms of this is one particular instance with one particular child or one
Right.
particular
Yeah.
employee, but we work within a system,
Yeah.
right? And that's one of the complicated parts of the Warren County School District. Like
Yeah.
it's not just one high school that we have to worry
Yeah.
about. We worry about four, and
Mhm.
how does this system work, and how do we make that work? So one of my favorite things to do. Oftentimes, we'll have teachers that are working on administrative coursework. Maybe
Mhm.
they want to become an
Right.
administrator. We have an administrator that wants to become a superintendent, or we have new board members
Right.
coming in and just taking them through. I mean, I still
Mhm.
teach, right? I
Right.
mean, I
Yeah.
just teach at a different level
Yeah.
and showing them the systems that these things snap into, that they're looking at, at this level
Right,
versus
yeah.
looking at it, from this high level. And it's always they're flabbergasted.
Yeah.
Like, wow, I had no idea. And see if people
Yeah.
knew this, and
Right.
right? It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, even from, from a perspective of going to board meetings as, a member of the public or a parent or a reporter,
Press,
right?
right?
Yeah. I mean, we had this conversation probably about 6 months or so ago that it takes a long time, even just to get through board meetings to really get a grasp of how things work and, how this thing might impact this thing over here and how that affects this. And, until you're really kind of immersed in it and
Yeah.
different levels of immersion, right?
Right.
But it can take a long time to
Yeah.
really get a full grasp of how everything works.
Yeah, people always laugh. They say, everybody has experience in school, so they think they know school.
Right,
They
yeah.
know the classroom,
Yeah.
right? And that's a very important part of what we do, and a very important part of school, right? That's the focus, right?
Yeah.
That's the goal. I mean, but there's a whole $90 million
Right.
operation going on behind all of that to make it happen. Like, we have to. I always tell people it's crazy. Like, we have a water plant. Like, we manage our own water system, at one of our schools.
Yeah.
We manage sewage systems. We have plumbers, we have
Right, yeah.
electricians, we have all these people that, fix the things so that the kids can
Right,
have,
yeah.
all about the kids, right?
Yeah.
But all of these other things are happening in a seamless fashion that people have no idea, in making transportation happen across, poor Mike. I mean, we always say like over 10,700 miles a day, buses and vans go every day.
Right.
Every day. It's crazy. We transport the Amish, we transport to public schools, we transport to charter schools, we transport to private schools, and making all of that happen. And people are like, we have to transport the Amish? Like, yeah, we transport the Amish. It's a responsibility.
Yeah.
And it's just, there's a lot that people don't know and understand.
Well, even from the classroom perspective, right? I mean, there's a big push, the science standards are all,
oh my gosh,
going through. And, most people are only seeing the front end of that.
Oh yeah.
Transition,
oh,
and maybe wouldn't even recognize it unless somebody told them.
Oh yeah. And my poor teachers right now, oh my gosh, they're working so hard. And that's one of, we call it the unfunded mandate, but that's what happens, right? Somebody somewhere at some federal and or state level, drops a mandate upon us, and away we go. So right now my science teachers are working like crazy. I mean, they're completely changing how they have to teach science. So I've got part of my staff that's, really excited about it because they embrace the methodology and the pedagogy behind what's going on. And some of my other folks are like, oh my gosh, I've been working on this my entire career, and now they're asking me to change,
I mean,
right?
And that happens probably
all
more
often
than people realize. And
all the time.
That's got to be one of the hardest parts of being in the classroom and being the front end of that is you really don't have any say, right?
You're on the receiving end of a mandate, right? And folks get frustrated, it can be mad and be like, well, they're making me do it, or they're making me do it, that sort of thing. Yeah, it is. And that's part of being a political entity, I guess, right? I mean, like we're driven by forces bigger than we are, and it's our job to just put the oars in the water and row. That's what they expect us to do.
So when you kind of look at the district as a whole, as it stands today, what do you think is the biggest challenge that the district has in front of it right
now? Money. Money to sustain what it is that we need to do. We are not on the positive end of the state and federal revenue stream. The numbers that drive all that are going in the wrong direction, right? So our enrollment's going down. Needs of our students are going up.
Right.
We have a large amount of geography to cover,
Right,
which nobody, I can't fix.
Yeah,
I mean,
right, yeah.
800 square miles, 800 square miles, no matter which
Not
way.
like you could just chop some of that off.
No. I mean, miles on the road are miles on the road. I mean, we've had those conversations over and over again. So, how we get this done and do the best that we can. And there's friction there with desires. I mean, when you talk to educators, for the most part, their desire is to provide the best amount of education that we can, and to do that is time, right? It takes teachers time. and that costs money, right?
Right,
To do that.
Yeah.
So advocacy is going to be a really important job of the next superintendent. There are a couple things going on at the state level. The state was sued actually
Right.
over the way they fund schools. Those folks that have more are getting more,
Right.
and
Yeah.
those folks that don't have a lot are not getting more. So their formula has been deemed to be
Yeah.
not fair and not constitutional, actually. So they're working on that. So as they work on it, there are probably 50 factors that
Right.
they have in that formula about how many how many economically disadvantaged kids do you have, how
Yeah.
many special education percentage, and how much is the local effort,
Right. Yeah.
in terms of, are they raising taxes, are they not raising taxes, and all of those things go into the formula, and it doesn't look incredibly positive for us. So
Right.
sustaining a quality product,
Yeah.
in the classroom, and supporting our teachers in the way that they need supported. I think that's going to be the most difficult hurdle that there's going to have to be.
And you talk about the funds and taxing and things like that. And I know the district has pushed for quite a while for the reassessment, countywide reassessment that's currently happening. How can that aid in this process in funding the district in the future?
Well, there's kind of it's interesting because it doesn't work the way people think it'll work, right?
Yep.
So reassessment isn't going to yield more dollars
Yeah.
for the school district. The pot of money that's headed to us from a local stand, the only way that those dollars increase is with tax increases, unfortunately. What it does is it levels out the share
Yeah.
that people are doing, so that it'll stop the bleed, I guess, if
Right,
you will,
yeah.
as a way of painting it. Because right now, with the common level ratio as old as it is, it gets applied when people appeal their taxes,
yeah.
and we lose.
Yeah.
And so we've been losing hundreds of thousands of dollars a year based upon these appeals because the reassessment was not done. So that was the reasoning. So it's not going to help. The only thing that will yield more local tax dollars for the district are tax increases, but it will stop the bleed on lessening the amount of dollars that we're getting, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, and it stops digging the hole, I guess, would be a good way to kind of
so
visualize that. Right.
Finger in the dike.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And let's, one of those things you mentioned, 800 square miles of Warren County. And, obviously from a transportation perspective, that can be a challenge because you've got, city roads here that are all paved and for the most part regularly plowed and maintained. But then you've also got to deal with, some of those places that are way out in the middle of the forest, and they're not, a lot of dirt roads, and they're not top of the list priority wise, in severe weather for maintenance and things like that. And so just geography alone, how much does that impact what the district can and can't do?
Oh, huge. I mean, huge in terms of, you're talking about weather. We can go there. Our townships do a great job. I don't want to take anything away from them. They do the very best they can. But again, a very typical thing that will happen is we have to make a call for weather. We make it for the entire district.
Right.
We're looking at it from this level,
Yeah.
not from somebody's driveway, right? And typically we'll get a comment, like, well,
why?
Why? It's not snowing here. It's fine here. And then other people will pipe in and be like, not everybody lives in the city of Warren. We have a lot of people that live in elevations and have different sorts of weather. So we always have to think across, the entire county.
Well, yeah, and that's, I lived in Scandia for a while, and actually had the privilege of going to Scandia before it closed, and now I'm in the museum up there.
Wow.
So, but just having lived there for a few years and seeing, at the top of that hill,
oh my gosh,
and then by the time you get down to, some of closer to the city streets, just the difference from there to there is night and day.
Yeah, I grew up on Scandia Road.
Oh yeah,
I grew up on Scandia. My parents still live there, so of course,
right.
It's night and day. I live in Russell, down some elevation, and they'll still sit with, a foot of snow where we're looking at grass.
Right.
So that's the way it works.
Yeah. And you had mentioned at one point, being able to work with different boards, and there's change frequently.
Yeah.
I just saw that this past November there was
Yeah.
some change on the board. How difficult is it to navigate some of those changes sometimes, or what do you have to do as a superintendent when those changes occur to make sure that there's not a negative impact into the function of
Yeah.
the district?
We have to teach,
Yeah.
right? I mean, that's originally what I do.
Right.
Anyways, that's what I am, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot to learn, and
Yeah.
and that's what we tell them, right? I mean, when they come on board, we have an orientation
Mhm.
process. We have an onboarding process to
Right.
help bring them on, and there's a lot to learn. I mean, the size of the notebooks, that we give
Yeah.
them. I mean, just understanding our labor contracts and
Mhm.
understanding, the rules that we operate within, and there are a lot of questions. It takes good communication.
Yeah.
I mean, my phone is wide open
Right.
all the time, and I get all kinds of well, why do we do this, and what's going on with that?
Yeah.
So it's teaching. We assign mentors among the board members, so they have people to talk to, and typically after we get through a year, and
Right.
then again we're hearing things like, wow,
I didn't know.
I didn't know, and that's why I think you see we've had a good we've had lengthy terms on the board.
Right.
Like people get on once they get into it and they learn it and they understand it, they're invested,
Yeah.
at that point. So I see a lot of really good things with our board members that we have, coming on right now. They're eager to learn.
Right.
They're putting in the time, and they'll get there.
Right.
But it's a teaching exercise and a learning exercise for everyone.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, like you said, by the time their term comes up, they're invested. But I mean, it could in a 4-year term, it could take half of that
Oh,
term
yeah.
just to really get fully grasped and immersed
Yeah.
in how everything works before you could even start to really go in and, oh, okay, well, now that I understand how this does this, maybe we can improve it
Yeah.
or change it or whatever. But to come in on day one and just, oh, well, we can do
Yeah.
all this, but well, maybe we can't, right?
Yeah, and learning all how the dominoes fall.
Yeah.
Like we can, but
But
Yeah,
if
yeah,
you do
that-
that, then
yeah,
this, and yeah,
and that's a really important part of the superintendent's role, right? I mean, that's what we have to do is we have to help them. Okay, so this is legal.
right, yeah,
We
yeah.
could do this. Here
Yeah.
are the implications, I've had a really positive experience with all the board members that
Right.
I've worked with, quite frankly. And usually you put it out there and help them to understand the pros and the cons of different things, and sometimes we disagree. You're not
Right.
always going to agree with everybody. You're working with 9 individuals on a board, that make up a
Yeah.
board, and that's okay.
Right. Well,
as
and it's
long as
healthy, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you should,
push each other.
right?
to,
Yeah.
when-
There should be questions and civil, right?
Yeah.
Like keep it civil, but
Right.
if everybody's of this, of that same hive mind all the time, then you get the blinders on.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, and then a lot of times, and we try to work with options, right?
Yeah.
Like, and there are different ways that we could approach this,
Mhm.
and typically minds come together, and
Yeah.
and usually when good minds come together, you end up with a better product than
Mhm.
anybody did individually. You know
Right,
what I mean?
yeah.
And just good ideas can come from that. So, yeah.
So when you look back at your time as superintendent, what do you think was setting COVID aside?
Oh,
what-
can we do
what-
that? Really?
yeah.
Can we really set
Well,
that aside? Yeah.
Beyond or beside COVID, what do you think was the biggest challenge that the district has faced in your tenure that you've been able to overcome and get through?
Aside from COVID and then the money that came with COVID, we have done. We've done more with less.
Mhm.
Which it takes a toll on people, right?
Right,
People are
yeah.
tired.
Yeah.
But that goes back to the dollars, right? In terms of how are we going to make this work, given
Right, yeah.
the schools that we have, the geography that we have, and how are we going to get everybody the most that we
Right,
can
yeah.
to get the kids the best that we can, with what we have, and that's quite a balancing act,
Yeah.
to make that happen. You can't go autopilot.
Right.
Folks don't want their taxes to go up, right?
Right. Yeah.
But yet wages and costs every year
Yeah.
on go up. So how are we
Mhm.
gonna make that happen? That's been a huge challenge. Getting us through, and it's sort of COVID-ish, but it's not. The county's footprint when it comes to broadband has been
Yeah.
a huge
Mhm.
hurdle for our kids.
Yeah.
Right? We have a lot of kids that live on those dirt roads,
Yeah.
where things aren't there. So our use and integration of technology has been a dance over, where the county is. And so we've been pushing and continue to push, to get more fiber on the poles out there to get to every single kid's house, and level things out, because that's becomes a matter of the kids that have and the kids that don't have. And that's very frustrating, right? And I mean, for us to leave anybody behind. So that's been a huge battle.
So, and when we look at COVID and when it occurred, I mean, obviously that was just unprecedented kind of thing.
I still have
But how much more challenging would that have been had we had to go through all those things, say, in 1991?
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I can't even imagine. Yeah. I mean, just our ability to communicate with people, right? I mean, it was, I mean, we've had, it's funny, as I clean out the filing cabinet, there were several files about pandemic preparation, and then the H1N1. You remember all that kind of stuff that people just had on file. There's no file that could prepare anybody, for any of that. But I mean, directly to your question, at least we did have the tech that we did. I mean, at that point, we were on the verge of going 1-to-1, with laptops and having cell phone, communication and all that with homes. It was just hard. It was just more kids would have been tucked in that we couldn't get to.
Right. Well, you get all those dirt roads that we talked about, right? The isolation and when you're being told to isolate, it makes it even harder.
So that was difficult.
And like you said, with something like that, it's not like you can just independently make decisions, right? You're at the whims, and if somebody else had been, president or governor or whatever, maybe different decisions are made, and you just never, like you talk about those plans, right? You could plan it all day long.
It was the most insane lesson in politics that I ever had. I mean, we all know that schools are driven by politics, right? I mean, our money comes from the government. That's the way it works. But just watching, I've never. I mean, we sat back into. People didn't know. I mean, the lack of direction and the conflicting direction and all of the things that we had to do. I will tell you that the one thing that we really learned the most out of that, I mean, we banded together, so we're organized into intermediate units at school districts. So RIU banded together, I mean, here we are, 17 school districts, trying to figure this out, listening to Department of Health, listening to Department of Ed, listening, everything that's supposed to be happening, and then trying to apply it in a way that you don't know. I mean, now we know. I mean, now we know what it was like. But in the midst of it, you didn't know. And we were administering shutdowns when we didn't even have it here. I mean, it was. I mean, it was a wild time of. This is how government works, right? It was crazy.
Well, and I mean, I was sitting in the newsroom over there at the Times Observer, and on that. What would eventually be that Friday the 13th, right? But and it was just, I'm laying out the sports page, and all of a sudden it's NBA's canceled, NHL's canceled, PIAA's canceled. Oh, now they've canceled the NCAA basketball tournaments, and and it was just like you said, almost like dominoes, one right after the other, and I'm sure it was for you guys.
Oh, it was wild.
Just watching, because we were one of the last states to implement shutdowns. If I'm remembering, I want to say New York had already done it, and I think maybe Ohio.
I don't know that I remember that. I was
but I mean, obviously we were, tracking everything as it was kind of coming in, and it was, the tea leaves were trending in that direction.
They sure were.
But again, as you're sitting there, I mean, does it basically become a point where you're just waiting for the call?
Well, it was interesting. It was coming slowly, and then boom. I remember Matt Jones leaving for vacation, and he had been watching. Of course, part of his role is communication,
Right.
and that sort of thing. And so he was getting like drops of intel. I'm getting drops of intel in my email box. Patty, of course, she oversees the health services, so she was getting, drops of intel that this was happening. So we weren't like.
It's not like we were blindsided.
Right. But it was, I remember Matt leaving and saying, they're talking about like food programs, that people might need to put in place. And, do you want this stuff right now? And I'm like, I don't think now. I mean, like, I'm like, thinking like it's out there and that we would have time. And then that Friday happened, right? And then Jim Grush and I are sitting there with her on a Saturday, like, oh my gosh, we need to get these food programs up and going like now. So it felt like, and again, I think it was, that higher level, that at that state level, they were making decisions based upon the whole, where it wasn't really necessary here. We weren't seeing anything, we didn't have anything. So that was what was,
because it was
part of that.
Another 2 or 3 weeks, I think, even before we had a confirmed case of somebody from Warren County.
Yeah, it wasn't until we weren't really handling anything even until fall.
Yeah, right.
At the school level. So it was. So we got. It was what it was.
So now, as you're, like you said, you got 5 more days left. Monday's going to be your last committee meeting,
right?
And
right.
If you had all your brothers, utopian state, you could do whatever you want. What would be your ideal picture of Warren County School District and how it handles, teaching and transportation and buildings and finances? And I mean, the ideal. This is the way we could be the best of the best.
Yeah. So if money were no object, money is no object. They say if we've learned anything and we understand kids, we know that it's not English that brings them to school or math usually, right? I mean, it's the other things. It's their drama program, or it's the band, or it's their chorus, or it's their sport, or I could go on and on and on. And for some kids, like even the career center programming, like I have kids that will, they want to weld. That's what they're learning. They're learning that career, those intense, specific experiences that we can give them that are super meaniful and rewarding to kids. That's what they love.
Well, I'm sure there's just the social aspect of it for a lot of kids.
Right.
Too.
And if money were no object, and you could have all of those things that they love everywhere.
Right.
That would be great, because that way, we know kids are wanting. That's everybody wins, right? But we run out of kids to be able to have. We don't have enough kids that love this over here. We don't have kids that love this enough to have a bunch of them do that. That's what you want. And you want those like immensely rewarding and exciting opportunities for kids to be available for them. And I would magic wand it. Right?
Well, and how much of that would just be, from the aspect of, we're just shy of 4,000 students, right?
Yeah, we're 3,800 some right now.
But how much of that would be, if there were 7,000 students?
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and that's the hard part. Right now, I think the mentality and it's hard. It's hard to get beyond. I see it. It's not just the school district. It's everywhere.
Right.
People want what they had. People don't want it to change. Right.
Yeah.
And there were more people doing a lot of things. There were more people in the fire department. There were more people doing EMS stuff, and there were more people in schools.
Right.
And we have a lot of behavior that people want to hang on to what they had, and the population isn't here to do it, right? Because the money, nobody has the magic wand to make it money no object. Yeah. So trying to make it all happen with the dollars that we have, what you see is things just get spread thinner and thinner and thinner, right? And again, not just school. That's countywide in an area where things are not growing, right? They're declining. So I think the energy, the creativity, and the desire to recreate new solutions instead of trying to hang on to old
Mhm.
old feelings and
well,
memory.
this is the way we've always done
Yeah,
it, right?
yeah.
We can't have that mentality
No,
anymore. It's got to be
no.
how can we change how we've done things, or what can we do
Yeah.
differently or new?
Yeah. And my approach in leadership, it's very rare. You go back and look at the minutes. I don't usually say it's the way we've always done it. I mean, that's
Yeah,
not
right,
particularly administratively, like
Yeah.
that doesn't cut it. I mean, like every once in a while, you've got to, clean off the top of the table. You've got to pull the data. Where are we?
Yeah.
What does it show us? And what, how can we attack this? How can we solve this problem in a new or, different way? And some things, tend to keep going the way they have just
Right.
because it might be the best way with what we have right now. But I mean, that thought process, I think, really needs to be applied across a lot of
Yep.
the area, not just school.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Because it's, again, you, as a leader in the school district, you're focused primarily on the school district, but it's not. It can't
Yeah,
just
we don't
be
operate in
singular, right?
isolation.
Yeah, you're not isolated.
No.
The commissioners are not isolated.
No.
The municipality, the borough councils, the city councils, the township supervisors, you're not operating in isolation. And it seems like maybe that's been one of the big hindrances, is there's been so much of that. We're just kind of over here doing our own thing.
Yeah, longevity, that, and I guess that's why. I mean, we've been able to get more done in my tenure. I've been there for 8 years,
Right.
And having somebody in house will be able to pick up and get things done. It takes a while,
Yeah.
to learn
Right.
the job,
Yeah.
to figure out where you're at, to get that data out there, and figure out really what the problem is, not just what 3 people are barking in your ear about.
Right.
You know what I mean? I mean, you really
Yeah.
have to know what the problem is, and being able to get to that point of big picture, solve it. And the other problem I think that exists, I mean, there really isn't a big countywide mentality. What does the county think? I mean,
Right. Yeah.
going back to those communities,
Yeah.
like you have independent, smaller communities that have their own independent thoughts, and collectively, I don't know what the county wants.
Right, yeah.
Right. I mean,
I don't think anybody's ever asked.
right.
To be honest,
yeah.
we've spent so much time, being divided by the arbitrary lines that are drawn,
Right.
To create a municipality or township or whatever,
Right.
that not enough people have gone, okay, yes, you live in Tidiute, or you live in Russell, or you live in
Yeah.
Youngsville or Sheffield or the city or whatever, but we all live in Warren County.
Yeah. We're going to start to need each other, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if
Yeah.
the fire department can't
Right.
fill the roster over here, we're going to have to shared services.
Yeah.
I mean,
and
it
you're
has
seeing
to-
it with EMS.
Yeah, it's got to move in that direction. Again, the population isn't here to support everything that was. It's hard. It's controversial.
Yeah.
Hard work, and I'm optimistic. That we have leaders in place that'll be able to do that.
Yeah. So before we kind of wrap this up, a week from today,
Yeah. Right.
you will be officially
Right.
retired.
Yeah.
What do you think is going to be the biggest thing that you'll miss about working for the district?
The people,
Yeah.
right, and kids, right. I mean, that's why we do what we do. I mean, we are blessed. I mean, we have amazing schools filled with amazing kids, amazing staff,
Yeah.
and those folks show up every day to do the best they can for kids, right? I mean, that's what we do, and they're good people, I mean, and I honestly, I mean, we have to deal with issues here and there, but
Well, yeah.
in general,
Yeah.
I mean, I will miss those people. Yeah.
And so what's next for you? What do you do
Yeah.
after March 1st?
Yeah, I
right?
don't know. I've said a few things. I said I'm definitely going to have a different relationship with my phone.
Yeah.
Every time that it
Right,
goes
yeah.
off, it's not an emergency or
Yeah.
something that I need to do. I'm headed south to see my parents on Monday.
Oh,
The
there you
Monday,
go.
not
Yeah.
this Monday, but a week from Monday. I'm
Right.
headed down for a couple weeks to see them. They spend the winter down there, so
Yeah.
that'll be nice.
Mhm.
Golf season's right around the corner.
I was
right?
just gonna say, I'm sure you'll be hitting
Yeah.
the links pretty hard.
Golf
this summer,
season.
yeah.
I said the timing is good because this is
Oh, well,
gonna
yeah,
lead right into
April, right?
right
Yeah,
into
yeah.
golf season, which will
Yep.
lead into archery season,
Oh, there you
which
go.
leads into hunting season. So I feel like I'm gonna be busy,
Yeah.
for that time. I have a lot of projects at the house. And
And now you have time, right?
Yeah,
to do
yeah.
some of that.
kids that could use, could
Yeah.
visit my Chicago girl.
Yeah.
I said maybe cook dinner for my Warren girl every now and then. And, Yeah.
I noticed you're talking about the girls. Rob's not in the plans here.
Yeah, he's definitely in the plans. I think he's looking forward to not cooking dinner and having me take care of a little bit more. We operate at a pretty fast pace at our house, so it'll be nice to be able to kind of just slow down a little bit and take care of things. So, yeah.
Well, and before we go, I want to make sure that you see these. We had a couple of comments come in from Melissa Bullock, just a thank you, and also from Dana Ray.
Dina.
Dina, sorry.
Yep.
I'm rapidly approaching that age.
Yeah, you need the specs.
Yeah, mate. Yeah. Well, I got the contacts in, but
some good people. I've met a lot of really, really awesome people over the years, and not just at the school district, around the county. And that's, it's been a pleasure. I mean, it really has. I've been lucky to serve in the role. I've done my very best, you know what I mean? And it's, I'm ready. Like I'm excited. I've always said, it's been funny watching, I did HR, like I said, I did the job that Gary is currently doing for many, many years, and watching people retire. And it's a really psychological thing for some people. Like, I mean, I sit back sometimes and just look and think, wow, I don't think I'm going to be sad. Like, I think I'm going to be excited about it. And I am. I mean, I feel like this is planned, you know what I mean? That it's not something that just happened. But I've been looking forward to this, and I don't know whether my brain is going to rest well or not rest well. Everybody keeps saying, really? Like, are you going to be able to not do anything? And I don't know. I really don't know.
But there's opportunities, to be involved with different things.
And I'm ready. I mean, I'm self-aware enough to know that it might go well, or I might need to do something. The interim superintendent gig is out there. Sometimes people just need somebody in a crisis, like I did before. Here, to give a couple months.
And there's a couple regionally. There's a couple of districts, in that process right now of looking for someone as well.
So if I need to, I'll be not need to, but if I psychologically need to do something, I have choices and options, and we'll see how it works. And Rob and I have to figure that out. He's still working for a few more years yet, and one step at a time. So we'll see how this fits. And we've always made those decisions together and what we want, what we need to do. So if this fits, we'll stay there. And if I need something more, then
get a little stir crazy.
Then we'll figure that out.
All right. Well, won't keep you too much longer. It's a nice Saturday, a little chilly, but it's a nice Saturday out.
Cold but sunny, not a golfing day.
Well, and that wind's kicking up a little bit too.
Yeah.
But Amy, thank you so much for taking some time and for your 30 plus years of service to the students here in Warren County. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
That'll wrap it up for Coffee and a Conversation this week. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Tune in next week. We'll have the founders of Charcoal and Gray on the show for you here from the White Cane Coffee Cafe. Amy, thank you. This is Brian Hagberg saying so long. Have a great weekend, everybody.
You know what would make that better? A cup of White Cane coffee.
Wow, that really is great coffee.
White Cane coffee, because every cup makes a difference.
It's not just about music lessons. It's about hard work, perseverance, dedication, self-expression, making memories. Let's make memories together.